Hello everybody and welcome back to Odin's movie vlog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we're going to be talking about some pretty exciting news, but also some very bad news for Rian Johnson. I just made my video the other day talking about why James Wan is such a better director than Rian Johnson for no other reason than the fact that James Wan is respectful, James Wan understands the fan base, and also James Wan takes responsibility for himself. Rian Johnson does not. Rian Johnson likes to mock the fan base. Rian Johnson is stuck up. He is the typical Hollywood elite type. Well, now we've gotten some pretty cool news, and I have to give a huge shout out first thanks to Darth Panther, Darth Nemesis 8, Nemesis 08 on my channel. Just thank you so much for saying this my way, man. And I've been missing you on my live streams, but still, thank you so much for this news. And this is coming from 17. So this is, of course, a pretty major publication. Would I say that this is the most accurate source of news? No, I would not say that at all. I would not say that this is anywhere close to being an AP or anything else. So obviously, I would say that Lucasfilm could come out tomorrow or even later today and say, hey, 17 got this information wrong, but it is still out there, and it would not surprise me if Lucasfilm decided to put this information out just to a few people and have it be put in publications like this, just so that way it went under the radar, or at least tried to go under the radar. This is everything that you need to know about Disney's new streaming service, and honestly, I don't care about anything because the main thing that stuck out to me was this last paragraph right here, these last two paragraphs, just to give you some more context. The service will also feature a ton of other cool shows, along with the High School Musical, is that what that means? HSM series, the Disney streaming service, will produce other original TV series, including a Star Wars series, a new original Marvel series, and a Monsters Incorporated animated series. Okay, all that sounds pretty cool, but then we get to this last part. Disney also intends to produce 4 to 5 original movies a year, including a brand new Star Wars trilogy written and directed by Star Wars The Last Jedi director Rian Johnson. Rian Johnson will not get a trilogy that will be released in theaters, is what this is actually saying. Now, they might try and spin it, trying to say, oh, well, Netflix does this all the time, and you don't really go after Netflix. Well, here's the main difference. One, you from the very beginning, when you talked about this trilogy, including from Rian Johnson, indicated that this would be released in theaters. Firstly. Second, if you're trying to make a crap ton of money, the theater is where you make it. Now, I'm not saying that you can't make money on these smaller services. Obviously, look over at Netflix. Netflix produces several original films every single year, so you could easily say that they're doing exactly what they're already doing over there. The difference is that Netflix had to spend years building up content, building up a fan base, building up trust among that fan base before they were eventually able to start producing their own films. It's only really been a year, a couple of years since they've actually been producing pretty much almost on their own exclusively this type of original content. Disney is apparently trying to get it started almost immediately, which obviously you could say, well, Disney's a very big corporation, Disney has a long history, so you could say that they've been building up trust with a huge fan base for that period of time. And that, you know, in the end might be true. But because this is Rian Johnson, because this is the man that made a film that broke Star Wars, because this is the man that has mocked the fans who didn't like his film and has continued to be an asshat about it, this, to me, is a demotion. This, to me, means that they do not believe that Rian Johnson, if this trilogy had been released in the theaters, would have made money. And this tells me they very much are aware of the Phantom Menace, and this so-called small vocal minority of voices is obviously a lot more powerful than they want to admit to. Because if they truly had trust in Rian Johnson, if they thought that Rian Johnson could move the franchise forward, they would give him his own theatrical release. Now, let me tell you about some of the differences. Some people might be wondering, what actually is the difference between getting a theatrical release or getting released on Netflix? Like, how does that, you know, or in this case, the Disney streaming service, you know, what would the difference be in price and how much they would make? Well, that's just the thing. We know, or we have a pretty good idea about how much things cost when you get a theatrical release versus when they are released on a streaming service, because Netflix has been doing it, as I said, for about a year or two. So let's just take a streaming service series, for example. Some people have estimated that some of the higher end shows could cost anywhere to up to $10 million per episode, meaning that let's say you have a 10 episode series. That means you spend $100 million just on that series production wise. Now, of course, you will be spending some money trying to promote the series, but guess what? Most of your promotion is going to be on your service, which is free. Free promotion. It's a great thing. So it's actually kind of genius because it means you're able to save a lot of money on the front end, even though your overall return on that investment is a little bit shadier, because you're not just relying on people to buy that one product. It's not that I'm going to Netflix and paying for this one show. It's I'm paying for a subscription to receive this show among many other things. And that's the reason why you can understand that they spend significantly less on the actual product itself, but then they also take a bit of a risk, because it means that they need to keep making content to bring more people in to pay that monthly subscription service fee in order to make up for the money that they're spending. Now, of course, there's other revenue streams as well, because they could release them on DVD and Blu-ray, which you see them do a lot as well. And so therefore, that's how they're able to make some of that money back. But it's a lot trickier. It's a lot harder, seeing that they don't release those numbers. They don't tell us how many views certain shows get. They claim to know it, and they claim when shows do very well, they're able to say, oh yeah, we know about, for example, Bird Box. Bird Box just got recently released, and they released the information saying, oh yeah, about 42 million people watched it, or at least opened up the file. And all of us were wondering, hey, why don't you do that for all your series and all your shows so we know just how successful they are? Well, of course, they're not going to do that, because they don't want to be honest about it, because they don't want anyone to know just how well shows are doing or how their algorithm works, because they want to keep those things close to the chest. Now, of course, there are certain sites that claim to have the ability to read those algorithms and figure out just how well a series is doing, and I believe it, because obviously you can follow certain internet traffic. You can't stop the signal, as we learned in Serenity. You can't stop the signal, Mel. But with all that being said, let's get back to the Star Wars news. So this means that they are only going to spend so much on this trilogy. And also it raises questions. Is this going to be an actual movie trilogy? Is this going to be a series instead? Is it going to be maybe like Sherlock, where each movie is about an hour and 15 minutes? If that's the case, guess what? That means a significantly smaller budget. But also, since it's being on the streaming service, you know damn well they are not going to release those numbers. Now, here's the thing. The battle has now shifted. Because at first it was with the theater, because all of us, as part of the Phantom Menace, were saying, and even I'm not all much for boycotts, but because of Rian Johnson, not just because of The Last Jedi. If I was just being this petty because of a movie, obviously, like, I really... I would be critical of myself at this point. But it's not just the fact that he made The Last Jedi. It's not just the fact that he broke Star Wars. It's more so to do with the fact that he, during this entire process, has continuously mocked the fans and not taken any blame, and has put himself on such a high pedestal that he was just asking eventually to be pushed over, which to me this is. This is obviously Disney saying, we don't have enough confidence in you to put out good content that's going to make money. Because as I said, on the flip side, it costs more to put a movie out into theaters, because not only are you paying for production value, which is about the same as far as the production costs, but you're also paying a lot more for marketing. Again, when you're in-house, when Netflix makes a movie, they can put it at the top of their page, so every time you open up Netflix, boom, there it is. And that costs them nothing, because they already own the service. They already own everything about it. They can send you an email. They have so much access as far as free marketing is concerned. So therefore, that's one less cost, because remember that for movies, normally you take about half the production budget, and that's how much a studio usually spends on marketing. So let's say you spend $100 million on a movie, usually that means it's going to cost $50 million to actually promote the film, which means the entire production cost in total would be about $150 million, which then you have to make back. On top of that as well, when you release a movie, you have to split revenue with the exhibitors. You have to split revenue with the AMCs, the Regals, and all those other places. And normally it's about a 60-40 split. The studios get about 60%, studios get about 60%, the theaters get about 40%. So let's say you quote-unquote make $100 million. In reality, you only make 60. Because of the way that they split the revenue. When something's on a streaming service, they keep all the revenue. However, it means that they rely that much more on people actually subscribing to the service. And that is why the battle has now shifted. The battle has now shifted to the streaming service, because now what you have done, Disney, and again, they could easily come out later today and say, this is not true, and oh, I don't know where they got this information from, and 17 needs to retract. They're not going to, though. I'm very confident they're not going to, because 17 would have no reason to run with this type of article, would have no reason to put this information out there. It's not like it's breaking the information, it's just a part of the overall package. So obviously this information is out there somewhere else too. Obviously this information is known to somebody. And because of that, what this means for them, and the new battle, is in those Disney subscription services. Because now, the Phantom Menace, guess what? Not only did a lot of us not want the subscription service before, now you've given us an active reason to boycott the service. Now, I'm not calling for an active boycott. I'm not that kind of person. If you want to boycott it, go right ahead. Go right ahead. I've said from the very beginning that if Disney is able to somehow give me every single classic Disney movie on top of every single classic Disney series, then I might be interested, especially if it's at competitive price, because I would be buying it for that reason. But let me just say that you've given me a much, much stronger case and stronger reason to not even get the service for that and to wait and see if we can somehow get this trilogy canceled altogether. Because once again, if Rian Johnson had just made The Last Jedi, had acted like a Colin Trevorrow, had acted like a James Wan saying, hey, the buck stops with me. If you didn't like the film, I am sorry. There are certain things that I wanted to do, and if you didn't agree with that vision, hey, that's okay. I hear you. I understand you. At the very least, the fan base would say, hey, you know what? Rian Johnson's not that bad of a guy. But he didn't do that. Instead, he broke Star Wars and then doubled down on it and then mocked fans for not liking it and then got his entire army of cronies to be able to attack the fans as well. So this is a huge demotion for Rian Johnson. This is a big win for the Fandom Menace. And also, this tells me that they don't have confidence in him to make that money at the box office because, as I said before, because it costs a lot more to make a movie that gets a general release, and because you don't get as much of that money back automatically, which means you need to have a very successful run on top of successful Blu-ray DVD sales. That means they're not confident that Rian Johnson can bring in that kind of money. They only have enough confidence within him to make a series for their streaming service, to make a movie for their streaming service, and hope that somehow in the mixture of things, it gets lost by the fact that they're not actually making direct money from it. Instead, they are just trying to rely on subscription service revenue. And that, to me, tells me everything that I need to know about their confidence in him. And I would not say it's very long, especially if they don't get a lot of subscribers. If their subscriber count is not as high as they think, that means that they have to start to reduce the amount of projects they can do. Netflix would be the same way. If Netflix all of a sudden started to do very poorly with getting subscribers, guess what? They would not be able to release as much original content. If Disney is not able to produce the amount of subscribers that they're banking on, guess what one of the first projects is going to be that they're going to say, we're not going to spend our money on? The project that was going to be a theatrical release, because you can find the news articles about how it was going to be a theatrical release, to the one that was then moved to their streaming service, because obviously his is one of the first on the chopping block. But anyway, guys, what are y'all's thoughts about this? Do you think that I'm reading a little bit too much into this? Do you think I'm giving 17 a little bit too much credit? Again, if this was a obscure website that I had never heard of before, if this was not a major magazine publication, I would not have even made this video. I would have said, hey, take this with a giant grain of salt. And as I said in the very beginning, Disney could easily come out tomorrow and try and say, oh, no, this isn't true. I don't think they're going to do that, though, because it just, to me, makes so much more sense for them to do it this way, because it costs them a lot less, which means it's a much smaller risk for them to make this trilogy on their streaming service versus in theaters. But because it's a smaller risk, that tells you they do not have as much confidence in Rian Johnson as they may have wanted to seem like they did after the release of The Last Jedi, which makes sense because they wanted that movie to make as much money as possible, and obviously it did. But not anymore, Rian Johnson. Your number's up, bud. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, smash that like button. Give me a thumbs up. Give me a subscribe. It helps me out a lot. You are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a great day. And as always, God bless.